Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. A little bit of a different arena. This is MD joined here by Covey, the two men in the arena here, and no guest. We're going to get back to, just for now, I guess, we'll see where the wind takes us, but us two just having a conversation. Really excited about this. This is, I think, my favorite thing to do is just get into deep conversation with people who I care about and also care about myself. So, um, yeah, anything that you want to say to kind of help kick us off here?
No, it's a new space. Life happens. We move. Things move. But we're dancing in the moment. It feels just a little different if you're watching on video. But I'm excited. Obviously, no guest here. We're gonna get back to the roots, like MD said, and super excited to have a conversation. And I think to start, it is Men's Mental Health Month. The prior month was Mental Health Awareness Month, keyword mental health. And so with that, I think the natural first question is like, MD, how are you checking in? And not just, we had a guest on named Teddy Cerulis, and he said the idea of like, how are you doing has become a greeting, but not here in the arena. Like, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah. Well, I've learned how to answer that question a little bit because usually we use like good or not great or bad. But I view the answer to that question now as just like work in progress. I just think about the aspects where I feel like I have wind at my back, and then the aspects of my life where I feel like I still have like ankle weights, things that maybe pull against me. So there's a little bit of both. I think that's just part of like the work in progress. So I don't know. In some ways, I feel more adequate or equipped to answer that question. In other ways, I feel like I don't have like a one word answer because I'm still trying to get over like the greeting form of that question. So it's like you ask me that question, it's a lot of conversation probably to be had to answer it.
If I think of one word to summarize what I heard optimistic and hopeful. Maybe it lands, maybe it doesn't. That's kind of what I gathered from what you said.
Yeah, I mean trending up.
Yeah.
Like I think that's when we say work in progress, it's in progress. Like we're moving forward.
Right.
There were some setbacks, but I'm learning a lot about. I don't know about you. You just moved in to live on your own, and that was very revealing to me. First time this past for the last maybe 10 months or so is the first time in my entire life. I just thought about this, by the way, earlier today. First time in my entire life that I've lived completely alone. I'm not sharing an address with anybody, including family. And I realized it really shows in some ways like the environment that you build around yourself in that like domain of yours like is really indicative of like my level of self-love and like how I'm really doing. To paint a further picture of that, like I was
So
a mess.
when things are going well, this place is spotless, clean.
Right.
When things are not, it's a little bit more messy.
Yeah. And when I moved out from living with you, my place became a disaster because and like what I had to reflect on, what I had to realize was, oh, the reason I was a half decent roommate, keeping a place clean and like picking up after myself and putting the dishes away and like vacuuming and not leaving clothes all over the couch and like being a little bit more orderly as a roommate was out of like making sure I'm being a good roommate. The moment I like detached from that obligation of like I don't know if it's like a people pleasing tendency, but like the moment it was just me and my environment, it almost like was a mirror back to me of like, oh, you actually don't care about cleanly like keeping an orderly place and leaving a dish in the sink or leaving clothes on the couch. And what I started to ask myself, and it was a pretty hard hitting question, was like, do you care enough about yourself and how you feel about your environment that you will go and do, you know, small tasks but require some semblance of discipline? Will you go and do those things for yourself? So
What else have you? I mean, what have you uncovered with that?
I uncovered that I mean, the high level thing was that I didn't care about myself as much as I cared about my roommates or as much as I cared about family. And maybe that's because, I was conditioned to do chores because they were asked of me. And I never really, what I found was having now cleaned up the place. And by the way, I'm not living in a pigsty by any means. I don't want to make it seem like the walls are like molding and like the place is falling apart. It was more of just like the little things of just picking up after myself and keeping things orderly. What I found was there's a really good feeling on the other end of that. There's a really real happiness on the other side of cleaning your environment,
Making your bed.
making your bed, organizing your environment and the place around you. I never really learned that. I never really like let myself feel that, and so I never really, I think, let myself latch on to, oh, if I clean up the place. No, it's not the most fun way to spend a Saturday morning. Um, the alternative being to procrastinate and like do other things that are lazier and just leave the place, what it is. But I realized like, oh, on the other side of that is like a really good feeling, and like, oh, I can do this for myself now. So anyway, I cleaned the place today. I deep cleaned it. I would recommend anyone do that. Just refreshing the environment's been great. But anyway, back to some of the question. I think I'm trending upward because I'm starting to do more things like that for the sake of doing it for myself. And I think that's the biggest,
So
work in progress.
prioritizing yourself is kind of what I heard. Yeah, I mean, I think what you were saying is like that's a healthy form to get dopamine. I mean, that's what you're
Yeah.
getting is dopamine, and there's maybe less serving ways. There's unhealthy ways, scrolling and stress eating, whatever it might be. But there are healthy ways to get dopamine, believe it or not. And one of them is cleaning, making your bed, like doing things when you actually like think of them, i.e., like, ooh, I see a stain, like I'm gonna clean it now. I'm not just gonna put it off. That stuff feels good, and that's something that I've realized for myself too recently. I mean, this is the first time I've lived alone ever, and I actually enjoy cleaning. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy doing all these things that I never really realized. I haven't really figured out what it is yet, but I really enjoy having a clean place. Requires more cleaning than I thought with a dog, a dog that sheds. How I'm feeling, I would say in this moment, a little bit uncomfortable. Like this is just new. Like I'm like, where's the Men in the Arena sign? I don't see it anywhere. Like, where's the laptop that's usually on the table? Like, this is just a little bit of a new environment. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit nervous, but also excited. And overall, loving life. Like, absolutely in love with my life, with the life that I have created, that I'm creating, my schedule. I think you know me, I'm very routine oriented, and I've found a routine that allows me to prioritize the things that I care about, which is really like myself, so that I can then go pour in other people. So in this moment, a little bit giddy, nervous, excited overall about with like how things are going. I think they're trending in the right direction. Need a lot of patience starting my own business, but overall, things are good. Things are good.
It's like interesting because you asked me that question, like, how are you? Yeah, we were actually by the elevator about a half hour ago. And when I hear that question now, I like zoom all the way out. I just think life, big picture. And I think that's why I struggle to find words, because I make it too overwhelming of a question. Whereas like you are probably more in the moment, more zoomed in than I am in that, like in the way that you answered that question was like, literally in this room right now, how are you feeling? And it's interesting because like you can get really present and talk about, yeah, this is uncomfy, it's a new room, new setup, we haven't done a conversation like this in a while, there's a lot of like newness, and I didn't even think to answer about like how I'm feeling in the moment. It's just like, how are you doing? And like, I don't know. I just zoom way
Well,
out.
I think some people don't know how they're feeling. Not necessarily
Sure.
you, but some people don't know how they're feeling. I was out yesterday, and I was with people I really really care about, but I felt a little bit disconnected. Like I didn't find myself as energetic, as alive that I normally feel, and so I when I got back, to my place, I just reflected. I highly recommend people do this, by the way, if you don't want to like write in journal, just like, especially if you live by yourself, spoken, like speak out loud to yourself. And I was just talking a little bit to myself, like, what am I feeling right now? What was I feeling? It's like, well, I was feeling a little like, a little sad, a little disconnected, not sure why. Well, why am I feeling that way? Oh, well, maybe because like other people were drinking and like I kind of felt like a little bit out of place, and there's a part of me that wanted to conform, but also a part of me that like knows that's not aligned to who I am. So I was just feeling a little torn. It's like, okay. And you, as you talk through it, like it's like, okay, like oh, that's great. You know, I think there's such a power in just understanding what's going on with ourselves, you know, because I think we don't give ourselves the space to do that, and then we distract ourselves, you know, with things like social media. Pick up the phone. I know I do that way too much, even when I'm feeling fine. Like, but I like this idea of just like sitting, you know. Anyways, with all that to say, you know, I think in the spirit of Men's Mental Health Month, I want to say one thing first. It's okay to not be okay, guys. You know, that goes for men, women, all people. And I mean, I guess on the topic of emotions, you know, I think that's another thing to explore at some point. But I want to share something that I've really never shared about, and you can speak. I know, and you've had somewhat of a similar but different experience, but just around. I don't know if I want to call it an addiction with Adderall, a dependency on it for sure. But this is something I've never shared, and it's because I've had a lot of shame around it. You know, I think about my first, and I'm sharing this hopefully. I'm not coming from a place of like being an expert on addiction. I want to be very clear on that, or the symptoms. I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience with it in the hopes that maybe you're feeling something similar, maybe someone's not. But I remember my first conversation with my therapist 2 years ago. I shared about my sexuality. I came out, you know, which was something I never would in a million years thought I would have done at points. And through that whole period, the last 2 years with my therapist, I've never told her how I've felt like I've got a dependency to Adderall, or I had a dependency to Adderall. And I remember wanting to at some points, but having so much shame that I just didn't do it. And like for me, it really started, I would say, in college. You know, in college, you take it and you feel, I mean, you feel like so upbeat. You feel like you're on top of the world.
Invincible.
You know, invincible. I mean, you don't want to eat, you know, all this stuff, but you feel great.
For studying academics and then also social life, like the party
yes,
aspect.
all the above.
Yeah.
Partying, staying up late, and also to study. And
it's like an all-purpose.
Like literally like cleaning your room, deep cleaning. I mean, you name it, you can do it on it. I mean, you feel like you said, invincible. That's how I used to feel. And as I continued to use it through college, I started to use it post-college to go out and also to go to work. And I would never take it daily. I never got to the point where I would take it daily, but I would always have I would always rationalize it. You know, there was an important meeting that I had to go to, or, you know, I was going out and day drinking and I just needed to stay up. And I wouldn't take large amounts, but I would take stuff. And what was one time making me feel invincible was another time, you know, fast forward a few years, just to feel awake. You know, I think I became chronically fatigued. And I would use Adderall not to feel invincible and all that stuff, but literally just to feel normal, to feel like I do in this moment, like to feel like I have energy. And so I share all that to say that, like, and I'd always tell myself, like, I would always rationalize it, always an excuse. And I say that to say, if you think that you have a problem, you probably do. And, you know, I haven't used Adderall in probably 9 months. I definitely still get triggered, if you will. Like if someone mentions having Adderall, like there's a part of me that's like, oh man, I want to do that. You know, like I want to take it. Like it feels good. Like that would be great in this moment. But I think overall, I would say, yeah, I would say that if you feel like you have some sort of dependency, you probably do. If you feel like you know it's not good for you, but you still do it, it's something to explore. You know what I mean? And like I think about myself too, like there were many times that that I told myself I was done. You know, I'd go a month without taking it. You know, combine a 2 week trip with my family, and then another 2 weeks where I wouldn't do it. I'm like, okay, I'm done here. And then there's some sort of event or there's something for work where it's like, oh, I need to be it's a presentation I give where I need to be on Adderall. And so I'll stop there.
Well, I mean, and you weren't, like, just to be clear, like, you were never prescribed it.
Oh, no. This was not prescribed. I used to take it in bigger amounts, like, and then I would just, you know, like almost like what they call like microdose.
Yeah.
That's what I ended up doing. Like I was microdosing a methamphetamine to stay up.
Yeah.
And that's me, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what started as like, oh, like this is going to help me cram studying for a test, or this is going to let me go out and drink for a longer period of time, then turned into like, I'm having a hard time not taking it when I don't want to, or like I'm feeling triggers. Like there are cues, triggers, and then there's like a rewards, like the whole habit cycle starts to really kick in with that. And that's what you realized?
Yeah, it's real. You know,
I
mean,
what were some of the triggers?
Well, I just think like when it gets brought up, like I never think about it, but even the other day, someone mentioned either having Adderall or Adderall got mentioned in a text, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds nice, you know?
Wow, yeah, like candy.
Yeah, and like for alcohol, like I've stopped drinking alcohol for the most part as well. I never felt any sort of dependency to alcohol. Like it's so easy for me to stop. Like, yeah, I love to drink, absolutely, and I drink almost every single weekend. But when I was with my family for a month, and my family doesn't drink, I had no problem putting down a beer or never even picking up a beer. But I was thinking about Adderall. How can I get Adderall? Can I bring Adderall on the flight? You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many flights I would sneak Adderall. I'd be so scared. I'd be like, why am I doing this? Like, I would think, oh my God, this is what if I get caught? Like, my life's over. All that to say, I would still do it.
You weren't getting wired on flights, were you?
No, not
okay.
I
was like, I'm saying like different.
No,
I was like, what?
I've never done that. I never saw the benefit in that.
All that I was about to judge you right there in that moment.
Like I literally, it was literally just to like stay awake.
Yeah.
So like I would take it for work trips, you know, things of that nature, to go to a networking event. I mean, just, and it messed with my sleep.
I can tell you were pretty ashamed of it because, I mean, we lived together.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I never told anybody.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize. I mean,
and I was sneaking.
Granted, it's pretty easy. It's a pill, so like it's pretty easy to like keep subtle. But I mean, to be honest, this is news to me in terms of like how much you like. I was around, you know, the days in the playpen or like the long nights at the bars and like the parties, and like we studied econ together in college. Like I knew that you had taken it, and like we shared group chats with each other of like your means of getting it, but like. Seems like there's a whole other extent of your usage of it that I'm just not privy to.
No one's really privy to it.
And I lived with you. I've lived with you for years.
I was very, like I think looking back, I was very shameful of it because I was not open about it at all. Like I was very sneaky. I would put it, like I'd wrap it up and take it when no one was looking, or you know, I'd bring it to work and. Take it in the morning, you know, like before take it before I get to work, like things like that. Like it became such a part of my life that I just kind of assumed like, of course I'm taking it. Like I need to stay up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest takeaways for me is like in the spirit of men's mental health is that idea of shame, and shame can really block the ability for help to seep in because your shame is the reason you're hiding it. You know, if you're not hiding it, people can see that there's a problem, or people can people who care about you can, and granted, again, like I don't think, personally, I don't know if I would have seen your Adderall usage and been like, hey, Covey, I think you have a problem. I would have definitely been more aware of its usage. Maybe you would have talked more about it.
It would have helped.
But shame is going to suppress that, right? Like, when that's the thing, what a lot of men go through is like, we have a lot of ego, we have a lot of shame. You know, we're not willing to put our baggage on the table out in open daylight. Like we're not used to, we're not comfortable with, and we don't do this often enough where it's like, this is what I'm struggling with. It's like, you know, one thing to realize you probably need help. Another whole other level of courage to be able to say like, let me just open up about this to somebody.
I think the first part, is like acceptance. Is acceptance that like, hey, there's something here that I'm not okay with. Because I would rationalize it. Like I think a lot of people do. I would rationalize it. Like I don't have a problem. Like I only take it once a week, and I take it in a small dose. Or I only took it twice this week, and I took it in a small dose. Because that's eventually what it came to. Is rather than taking a lot of it, I would just take it. Like I just said. So there's always a way to rationalize it. But looking back, I always wanted to get good sleep. I could never get good sleep, and it's like, well, don't you think? And I would lie to doctors. I went to at post college. I went to a sleep doctor, and they were like, well, do you take anything else? Like, what do you take any medications? At that point, I was taking a lot of Adderall. Like this was right the first year post college.
Why did you lie to the doctors? I'm just curious.
Shame, man.
A doctor you might never
have you
see
never
again?
man? I've lied to doctors plenty of times.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm too scared to lie because I want an accurate result,
Oh,
No?
no,
So I'm just like,
heck no, you're not fine. Because then he said, well, because my thought process, well, then he's just going to tell me to stop taking Adderall. And I know I'm not going to do that. So, but yeah, he was like, are you taking any medication? No, I'm not. All right, well, I'm going to prescribe you Ambien. So we're going to give you more. And that didn't really help. And so now, after being sober from Adderall for the last probably 9 months to a year, getting great sleep, I have energy, about all these things I've ever wanted. I just had to actually say enough is enough and stop. And really, it really is a process of self-love. Like I didn't choose one day, I'm done with this. I just didn't take it for a little while. And I was like, ooh, okay, like I'm starting to feel a little better. And then as I start to just like harness who I am and fall in love with this person that I spend so much time with, it's like, why would I take this? I'm good. Like, yeah, I'm going to be tired some days, but like that's part of life.
so summarize that, like one sentence. Why did you ultimately stop or like want to stop taking it?
Uh, I just want to be sober. I want to have energy naturally. I care about my health. I know it's not good for my health. I've always cared about my health. It never sat well with me that, that it was, that I was doing that because I knew it wasn't good for me. I don't think any of us want to do things that we know aren't good for us. We still do them sometimes because we struggle to process emotions and feel things. And so we cope with things unhealthy ways. But at the end of the day, I knew I couldn't take Adderall forever. When I'm 50 years old, just popping Adderall. I mean, I'm sure there's people that do that, but that wasn't going to be me. So, but enough about me. Let's hear a little bit more about your story and
Yeah. There's a lot of overlap. I mean, for me though, it was weed, and it's. I was thinking about that relationship I had with weed. I'm like where it started, how it evolved, where it ended up, where it is now. High level, haven't smoked in probably never. There's probably a point in my life where I never thought I'd say this, but like it's been 8 months. I think November, maybe October. I don't know. I don't try to keep count necessarily. So what is it? June, probably 8-9 months. And I mean, I don't know about you, but like I don't feel any bit tempted or craving of it, at this point. But there was a point in my life where it was heavily involved in my life in like so many different aspects. I really credit like the book Atomic Habits in some ways because that helped break out the formula of like cue, trigger, reward. Once I started to apply that formula to like me smoking weed, it was like, oh my goodness, there's a million cues in my day and there's like a ton of triggers and it's everywhere I go, it's everywhere I look. And I was like, whoa, I am like, you ever see like those movies where like the weeds are like, or like the snakes are just like totally taking up the whole person. I was like, I am so entrenched in this. Wow, pun intended with the weeds. But it started so harmless. And I think that was, I introduced myself to weed. Well, let me back up even more than that. I, at one point, was a swimmer. I was like, hell no, I will never smoke anything. Like I cared too much about one, health, but also my lung health, like lung capacity. I had some family members that were chain smokers of cigarettes and like saw kind of like the end outcome of with the O2 tanks and all that. So I deep down couldn't even fathom the idea of inhaling something other than oxygen. And then, it was kind of around college time and really like an inflection point for weed becoming more legal, becoming more normalized. I think there's a lot of media out there that like paints this perception that like weed is harmless, it's healthier than cigarettes, it's no worse than drinking. Well, I mean, that's all I needed to hear. I was enjoying beer, so like if I'm gonna drink and you're telling me weed is less harmful, like again, the rationalization is like, well, sure,
No, we can rationalize
I'll
anything.
try weed, why not? And then tried it, had a great time on it. And like by the way, I'm not gonna sit here and preach and say that like weed is any bit compared to Adderall or say that like it is the worst thing in the world for you. I think my experience with weed is more the role it had in my life and how I was using it and what some of the cause and effects were from it. And I think that's going to be bespoke to myself. That's going to be my own personal experience. But I think could be helpful for a lot of people because I don't think my relationship with weed was overly unique. I think in some ways it can be very relevant to a lot of people who use it. And, what starts off with this like happy marriage of like, wow, this is awesome. I'm laughing uncontrollably. I'm enjoying every bite of food. Like hanging out with my friends is so much more fun. Going bowling is just way more interesting all of a sudden. Doing anything while, high on weed was like so much more fun.
Just like the
And
first few times on Adderall, it's like you feel like a freaking million
yeah,
bucks.
and I mean to be honest, I think it would still be that way. Like if I were to pick up a joint today, right, and like get high, I also appreciated it helped me think more creatively. I think it helped me untap like deeper thoughts and like I think there's a stimulating aspect to it. Again, it's like how you use it. Do you have a dependency on it? Are there unhealthy cues and triggers and habits around it that I'll get into? Well, ultimately, like I started to associate weed with free time. And any time, whether it was college and then after college, etc., anytime I had quote unquote free time, well, in the school system, that just means like you're not in class. So in university, I'm not in class most of every day, like you're only in class 2 to 4 to maybe 6 hours a day, tops for me at least. And so whether I was, and then, you start hanging out within an environment that normalizes going and working out while high and eating every meal while high, waking and baking, watching a movie high, going on a walk high, doing anything high was all of a sudden associated with, or not associated, but like perceived as this is the more enjoyable way to do anything. Um, and I was around it a ton and it was easily accessible and it was just so, and again, like the whole time I'm doing this, it's not like I'm seeing that there's consequences. At this point, like it's just there and like there's no harm, no foul, and I'm just kind of going about my life with it. I think that really sets a stage for like having really conditioned a lot of normalcy around just being high. Post college, I realized then I was starting a 9 to 5, a 9 to 6, right? And working. I was never high at work, right? But again, that's because the association with it was the free time aspect. It was on the bookends, right? It was like after work was all of a sudden a cue that, oh, I'm done with work, I can get high now. Or I'm about to eat dinner on a Saturday. Oh, I should smoke and get high and eat a dinner because my dinner is going to be more enjoyable. Oh, we're going to go and watch a movie or go bowling or do something. I should smoke before that, right? So there's just a lot of cues and then triggers that are kind of having me go and just smoke. Well, it gets to a point where all of a sudden I'm at like Thanksgiving dinner with family and I'm baked, right? Like all of a sudden, like, I'm sitting in environments or in settings where it's like, I don't know if this is right. It started to like cross some moral boundaries where again, I'm not like openly high and like talking about it to my family like, hey guys, like I'm on Mars right now. Like no, it wasn't like that. But over time it even got to a point where it was just less enjoyable. I wasn't really feeling anything from it. It was more of just like not even doing it for the feeling anymore. It was just doing it because again there were just so many cues and triggers for it. It was like, oh, I have a meal and I have nothing to do afterwards. Great. Oh, I finished my workout early on a Saturday morning and I have nothing to do afterwards. Great. What ended up happening was I was either working or I was high because that was it, And so, when I was getting high, I was getting lazy. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't being productive. I wasn't having great conversations. I wasn't building anything. I wasn't pushing myself to any extremes. I wasn't trying to maximize my day. I wasn't having deep social connections with people. I wasn't cleaning my environment and taking care of myself to the ultimate, like to the maximum ability. In fact, I would rush certain workouts because I couldn't wait to maximize the amount of free time I had so that I could maximize the amount of time that I'm just lounging on a couch, being high and eating good food, right? Not even good food, like junk food. And so, one day you kind of wake up, not you, but generally you figuratively. And I woke up one day and I zoomed out and I was realizing I'm a hamster on a wheel. I'm showing up, I'm waking up, I'm chugging coffee, I'm caffeinated, I'm working, I'm doing really well at work, I'm placing my identity in my work because that's the only time I'm sober and like living my life and doing anything exceptionally well. And then after that, I'm just suppressing myself. I'm just totally drowning myself in THC. And I'm like, this can't be all there is to life. I'm less productive. I'm not keeping up with myself. I'm not keeping up with relationships anymore. I'm distancing myself with family because, I can't smoke in front of them, right? Out of respect and all these things. And so it really started to like suck me in and suck me away from all the other things. I didn't want to go out to the bars anymore. I didn't want to go out and socialize anymore. I just wanted to go and do simple stuff like video game or watch TV or scroll on my phone and just eat food. And then, I think once I started to kind of like think through that piece of it, I also started to think about like, what is it hiding? Like, why do I care to be in this state all the time? And I think it was a combination of things. I think number one, I was just caught in a habit cycle, like a feedback loop that I just didn't have self-awareness around. But I also think it brought me away from my own thoughts and it brought me away from my feelings. And, in the spirit again of men's mental health and what I think my experience can help with a lot of people is understanding that like you might have this relationship with something or a dependency on something because it's pulling you away from something that's really uncomfortable. And that could be depression, that could be low self-worth, that could be shame, that could be bad relationships that need mending that you're avoiding because you have an avoidant attachment style, right? Again, these are the things that are specific to myself as my own examples. But I realized not only am I caught in this like perpetual habit cycle with it, and I'm not even doing it with a thought, but I'm also doing it because there's part of the reward system is I'm not sitting with my sober thoughts and my sober emotions. And, we always go back to like a man, like, would they rather take an electric shock or just sit alone with sober thoughts, like that was me, right? Like, give me the shock and the joint, essentially. Anyway, I think that was, so, the other day I was like, I could really go for a joint and, I think that'd be kind of fun to just kind of revisit some of that creativity. I think if I were to pick it back up, I could. I put it down really easily. I actually divorced it pretty easily. Like I gave up alcohol March of last year.
How many times did you try to stop smoking weed? Because I tried to stop taking Adderall.
See, that's where it's different for me, man. Like that's why I don't know if the word's necessarily addiction as it is more just like habit. But I also think I can call it an addiction, but I also think I didn't try too many times. But the times when I tried, this is what's key, guys. Like, it's not that I tried over and over and over and over. It's the timing of my attempts to stop smoking weed was very much aligned to my broader life transformations. Like, I was a happier being when I tried to stop. I was more self-aware when I tried to stop. I had more self-love when I tried to stop. I was living more authentically aligned to my values of health. I was living with more security. I had already shed a ton of my old environment. I had already started to reinvent the environment around me in terms of people that I was with. And like, so a lot of the cues and a lot of the triggers for it started to kind of disappear on its own because I started to change things within my environment. I started to change the way that I was living. So really, all I had to do was the final cue. I put the bong away. The bong is sitting in a cabinet above my microwave, I think, or no, somewhere, some cabinet in my kitchen right now.
Gotta get rid of that bad boy.
I could, yeah. I mean, but to be honest with you, I don't even think about it because
Yeah.
because that was a cue in of its own. I would show up from home or show up from work, come home, take off my, like, change clothes and like go into my family room and it's just sitting there staring at me. It's like this glass, beautiful, clean piece sitting in the middle of my coffee table, cue, right? The moment that was gone and, I stopped going and acquiring it, like, that was pretty easy for me.
Yeah.
But I did feel some temptations. I was at a social gathering, if you will, end of last year, and somebody was rolling a blunt, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll stick around. I was about to leave, and I was like, I'll stick around because I started seeing it, and like that was a cue in of its own, like the excitement of seeing the blunt get rolled.
Which I
But
think speaks again to environment.
totally,
I mean,
totally,
you mentioned, being around it makes
yeah,
it a lot hard. I mean, you have to exercise. Well, we all have a limited amount of willpower, and whether it's weed, whether it's Adderall, whether it's unhealthy food, like the less you surround yourself with those things, the less willpower you have to exercise. I think about myself and just I've lived with other people that don't consume the same diet as me, and living by myself for the last 3 or 4 weeks, there are times when I think I can catch myself like wanting to pick up food, not because I'm hungry, but maybe because I'm just like a little bit bored, and I don't have any food to pick up. There's nothing to, and just by not having it, then I can realize I'm not even that hungry right now. I'm a little bored. Like what's here? Like instead of eating, like can I get creative? Can I journal? Can I do something productive? Can I clean? Is there something, can I get dopamine from somewhere else other than something that I know isn't aligned with my values? So I kind of a tangent, but I think it's the idea of being a product of your environment is something we should talk about next week.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like dopamine sources. It's like like food being a big dopamine source for a lot of people. Food is supposed to be a survival need. It's supposed to be a necessity. And I think we've made it, I saw a study where it's like sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, because like the food service industry right now is commercialized. And so they're trying to profit off of consumption. And so they've designed I can go on and on and on, obviously, but like, that's another thing that we can reflect on. Like drugs are blatant, Adderall, weed, etc., alcohol, etc. Food's another big one that seems harmless, but again, if that's a source of dopamine, which by the way, I mean, the one thing I'll mention is when my dopamine was coming from being high, it really increased my tolerance to dopamine in some ways. It was like a cheap hit, and I was taking a ton of those hits, and like I started to not find a lot of pleasure and like enjoyment out of like simpler things, like a walk in nature, or good food or a good conversation.
Yeah, because we deplete all our dopamine with things like
Right.
weed, with things like waking up and looking at social media, the first thing you do. Like we are just naturally depleting our dopamine. Whereas instead of if you pick up, your phone and go on social media and scroll TikTok, you go outside and take a walk. I mean, you're going to feel like $1,000,000. We could go on and on. I think we're going to wrap up here. But I guess what's your one key takeaway? What would you tell anyone that maybe is, it's interesting because I do think I think there's levels. Just like there's levels of trauma, big T, little t, there's levels to addiction. I think my experience with Adderall is probably more of an addiction dependency than your experience. They're a little different because I was doing it just to feel normal, which I don't know.
It's also a more complex and potent drug.
Right.
Like.
But what would you say to anyone that maybe is struggling with, whether it's weed, anything, where they something where they're doing something that doesn't align with them?
Yeah, I would even take it broader, right? It's just be more aware of your habit cycles. Be more aware of your cue, trigger, reward. Like pick up Atomic Habits, give that book a read, and then like take the frameworks and apply it to every action you do in your life, whether it's making your bed, brushing your teeth, picking up a joint, etc. And I think just, once I started to become more and more aware of just how many little cues there were, easiest one is picking up your phone. all the cues of like boredom, the association of like boredom and like not having a dopamine hit, not being stimulated with picking up your phone. That was basically what it was like for me with weed, was like free time, not feeling obligation, not feeling like I had to do anything, was all of a sudden associated with getting high. So like that's my biggest takeaway, is like zoom out, take a very objective, honest look at like your habit cycles.
Yeah, and then once you do, I think you can ask yourself, what can I do that is going to be more serving or is more aligned with the person that I am today or the person that I want to be?
Yeah.
Can I go for a walk, a 5-minute walk, instead of scrolling my phone? Can I go to sleep instead of going, spending 20 minutes scrolling TikTok? Like the other day, I'm like, what? I spent a few minutes scrolling and I'm like, this is pointless. Like in the grand scheme of life, I'm going to remember none of this. Or I can get some more sleep, or I can meditate. So just find, that's a great one for me. Going outside, again, journaling, calling a friend, things that are going to give you the dopamine that you're looking for, that aren't, again, just to get cheap, that aren't serving you in the end, whether it's weed, whether it's scrolling, whatever it might be. Thanks all for listening. This was a fun conversation, and again. If you're struggling, you're not alone, guys. We're human. We're all doing this thing. I had so much shame about this that I haven't shared it ever. So it's part of life. It's part of being human. But at the end of the day, we have choices to make, and we're the responsibility for our lives. There's no better time to take accountability for yourself, for your actions, for your role in your life than now. So we love you, and welcome back to the arena.
Very well said. Take care, guys.